Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome back to yet another episode of Reflections, where we deal with issues that are not really talked about in the community. Let me tell you something real quick. If you're struggling with mental health, if you have anxiety, if you are suffering from depression, if you are suffering from PTSD, maybe bipolarism, schizophrenia, whatever it might be, guess what? It's because you're not a good Muslim. Yep. It's because your faith is weak. It's because you don't pray enough. It's because you don't read enough qur'an. It's because you don't love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enough. Do you know how tired I am of hearing that promoted all over the place? That is one of the most, not only is it off kilt, but it is one of the most detrimental things you can say to someone struggling with mental health. And I've heard it said so many times from big speakers, from professionals, from mental health experts who are Muslim, etc. And it is a problem. Let me tell you right now that just because you're having mental health struggles, it does not mean that you have no faith. It does not mean you don't pray enough. It does not mean you don't read enough Qur'an. It does not mean you don't love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enough, or He doesn't love you enough. Yes, I will say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Qur'an that those who leave off His remembrance, those who leave away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will give them a miserable life. So there is correlation that way. If you are weak in your practice of Islam, if you are weak in your faith, if you're not praying, you're not reading Qur'an, you're not doing the things you need to do, then yes, the end result is that Allah will give you a miserable life. It could be the cause of anxiety, depression, etc. if you are doing those things. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does say that in the remembrance of Allah does the heart find tranquility. So yes, praying more, fasting, reading Qur'an, all of that is helpful for the heart. But that doesn't always mean it's going to be the end-all, have-all for the mind and trauma. When I hear people say that you have mental health struggles, you have anxiety disorder, you have PTSD, you have depression, it's because you're not a good Muslim. Have you even considered the fact that maybe this person is doing all of that? Maybe this person is praying 5 times a day. Maybe they're getting up in the night and praying tahajjud and crying their eyes out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Maybe they're picking up the Qur'an every single day. Maybe they're doing all of the things that they can do, but the issue is a deeper issue that needs to be addressed and discussed that has nothing to do with their faith. If someone has childhood trauma, if someone was abused as a child, if someone was abused in their marriage, whether it be physically, emotionally, financially, if someone is a victim of rape, if someone is a victim of being battered, if someone is a victim of torture, you cannot tell me that that has an issue to do with their faith. It is a trauma response. Their anxiety is a trauma response. Their PTSD is a trauma response. And a lot of these things do begin with trauma. A lot of them begin in childhood. Even if we look at the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, he talked about this. But a lot of these issues begin as in childhood as children. And if they're not addressed, then they show their ugly head later on in life. And this is not something you're just going to pray your way out of all the time. This is not something you're just going to read your Qur'an out of sometimes. I know many people, including myself, who do all of the things that we are supposed to do in terms of we try our best. Don't miss salah. Get up in the middle of the night. Try to pray the sunnah. Try to read the Qur'an, etc., etc., etc. And we still struggle with panic disorder. We still struggle with anxiety. We still have bouts of depression. We still cannot overcome our bipolarism. We still cannot overcome our manic depressive states, because the issues and the root of the issue is not being addressed. And just by telling that person to go read more Qur'an and pray more, and that it's because they're not a good Muslim, all that does is want to push them away from the faith. If I was someone who was praying 5 times a day, doing everything that I could for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I was still suffering from anxiety, I was still suffering from depression, and I went to a sheikh, or I went to an imam, or I went to a counselor, and they told me it's because I'm not a good enough Muslim, then I would say, what's the point? Why keep doing this then? Why keep praying all the time? Why keep begging Allah? Why keep getting up in the middle of the night? Why keep reading the Qur'an if it's not helping, if it's not doing anything? This is a statement that needs to be eradicated from our ummah, and each and every single individual needs to be looked at in its own parameters. Every individual's situation, what they're going through, needs to be looked at its own parameters, and we need to get to the bottom of it. This is what I try to do in my counseling sessions, is to get to the issue and root of what is causing this so that we can deal with it. Yes, praying helps. It sometimes has kept the darkest of darkest days away from me. Reading the Qur'an helps. It's helped stave off the darkness. And having trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept me going. But it has not been the end all have all. I had to go through different stages in therapy and exploring my childhood and opening up past trauma and suppressed memories and repressed memories, etc. So there are so many different facets and so many different things that go into a person's mental health and their mental stability, and it is not always to do with the faith, and it is not always, oh, this person has a jinn, oh, they need ruqyah. If someone is suffering from a chemical imbalance, if someone is suffering from childhood trauma and PTSD, or from domestic abuse trauma and PTSD, you're not going to ruqyah their way out of it. You need to get to the bottom of what they're going through. And this is something that the Muslim community needs to stop sweeping under the rug, that there is a real mental health crisis in our community, and it must be addressed in a pragmatic, Islamic, holistic, as well as an academic way. And I don't see that being done, and that's an unfortunate thing. And that's why I have been an advocate for mental health for many, many, many years now, before it became more popular to do so during the pandemic, when mental health crisis became a big deal. I was an advocate for dealing with mental health in a proper manner. We need more Muslim mental health professionals who not only understand mental health from the clinical standpoint, but they also understand the religion and try not to conflate the two or put the two in separate boxes, but see that they are two arms and two wings of helping a person to recover from whatever it is that they're going through. Dealing with someone's PTSD, explaining to them how to unwrap it, how to unravel it, to let them know it's not their defining moment in their life, and they can become better. And through the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they can heal. They can heal, meaning that, and this is another thing, people always talk about healing. What does that mean? What does that even look like? I try to redefine that in my counseling sessions. Is if you were to cut your arm and leave a huge scar, it's going to heal, right? Yes. Will there always be a scar? Yes. Will that scar probably be sore for a long time? Yes. I still have a scar on my leg from a stupid accident with a gun when I was very young. It was only a little tiny hunting rifle, so it just it blew a hole in my skin of my leg. But that scar, to this day, it happened I think when I was about 14. But till this day, if I bump that scar on something like a corner of a table or anything, it hurts so bad. Like, I know that scar is still there. So have I healed from it? Yes. But is there always going to be a reminder of it? Yes. Does it affect me that much? No. I'll hit it and it'll hurt really badly, and then I'll just go on with my day. So you can get to a point to where the trauma still there. It's always going to be there. The scars are going to be there. But you can look at it as if it's something that was, not is. That's the goal of therapy, is to look at it as something that was and not something that is. One of the things that I like to understand, and this is just an analogy I use for my own trauma, is that I can't carry it around with me everywhere I go, right? That's just baggage, extra baggage that I don't need to be carrying with me. So I like to think of putting it in a jar and putting it on a shelf, like the ones behind me. Do I take everything on this shelf with me when I leave my house? No, I do not. It's there. I see it. I walk past it every day, but it's just there. Sometimes I pick it up and I look at it, acknowledge it, put it back on the shelf, and walk away. For those of you who watch my domestic violence tapes podcast, you know that my stepmother, and if you haven't, go back, they're in the podcast tab right here on YouTube, or on Spotify or iTunes, wherever you're listening or watching this at. My stepmother tortured me for 10 years of my life, from the age of 5 to the age of 15. And I didn't recover from it, meaning that I didn't deal with it. I shoved it way down deep inside. I didn't process it. I just kept moving. And that came out in very negative ways later on in my life. It has led me to be diagnosed with anxiety disorder, panic disorder, a few other things. But regardless, I remember sitting with my therapist one day, and my therapist said something that became an epiphany for me. My therapist said, your stepmother tortured you and put you through hell for 10 years of your life. You've been torturing yourself and putting yourself through hell for the next 24 or 25. And that really struck me, because it's true. The abuse stopped when I was 15. And then I continued to allow that to be such a significant part of me that I continued the abuse by proxy, meaning I was doing it to myself for the rest of my life. And I had to accept responsibility that I'm the one that needed to put an end to it, that it was now my job, because she was never going to acknowledge it. She's never apologized. She never even acknowledged it. But I do thank her, because she's allowed me to go and help so many people. But at the same time, I had to own up and take responsibility that I was the one that was now perpetuating the continued abuse by doing those things to myself, by not properly healing those wounds and allowing them to scar over enough to where they did not have a serious impact on my life anymore. So this process has been very helpful to me, and has been very helpful to many of my clients. But to say that it is a faith-only issue is dangerous. Those of you out there, and if I doubt anybody even is gonna watch this some big timer that is perpetuating this idea. If you know them, please send it to them and tell them to stop doing this, because you're damaging Muslims more than you're helping them. You're damaging their faith more than you're helping it. We need to separate the two and understand what is and what is not faith-based, and what is trauma or PTSD or abuse or whatnot based, or what might even be a chemical imbalance base. If a person is suffering from a chemical imbalance, they have bipolarism, schizophrenia, etc., you're not going to fix that by ruqya and Qur'an and praying. Yes, can Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fix it? Yes, He can. He can fix anything. But for every disease, there is a cure. And sometimes that cure is a cure of sitting down with someone, having therapy sessions, having counseling sessions, working through your trauma. Some people, and this is always from me the very last resort, some people need medication. They need to be medicated so that they can work through their trauma. They can work through their things. And some people, the chemical imbalance just needs to be reset, and it needs to be recalibrated, etc. So we need to deal with mental health in a proper and holistic way. And we need to stop making people feel, because when you tell people it's faith-based only, they're going to be ashamed to ask for more help. And we already have a big enough problem of Muslims being ashamed to go seek out help for their mental struggles and their mental health issues. And I'm not just talking about stress. Everybody is stressed, right? Like, we're all stressed. Life is stressful. But I'm talking about where it's become a point to where it's become a debilitating part of your life. You need to get help. And I remember reading a post not too long ago that said one of the red flags to look for, is someone who was abused as a child and is in therapy. That's a red flag. That's a red flag in someone to take in marriage. That's a red flag to someone to take in religion. I nearly threw up in my mouth. Because, especially for men, someone who was abused as a child, they had no say-so in that situation. They are not responsible for the abuse that they went through as a child. Now, if they are not trying to actively seek help, yes, that's a red flag. But to say that someone who was abused as a child and is now seeking therapy and help is a red flag, that is exactly why people, especially men, do not open up. They don't talk about these things because they're going to be stigmatized for them. And this was from some major account, big account. And I had to bite my tongue not to say something, because that is such gaslighting to say that, especially for a man, because men do not open up. Men do not open up. They're still the smallest part of my clientele, and I wish more men would open up and accept their issues and work through them and try to deal with them. But to tell a man that if he was abused as a child and then he opens up and tries to seek therapy, that's a red flag for him in many areas of his life, that's why men are not going to open up. And they're going to continue to suffer. And those who are around them are going to continue to suffer. Because you can hide them. You can try to hide them from people. You can try to hide them from your potential spouse. You can try to hide them from your children. But they will find a way to creep through the cracks. You can only lock those demons in the closet for so long because they grow in the dark. Demons, your demons that you deal with, that you fight, that you struggle with, your trauma demons, they grow stronger in the dark. When you lock them in the dark, they're going to grow stronger and stronger until they become strong enough to break down the door and come spilling out in your life in the most terrible ways. The best thing to do is to open the door with some professional setting. Open the door. Lead those demons out into the light. Make them stand in the light. And then you'll realize they're not as powerful and as scary as you consider them to be, and they weaken in the light. That is the whole reason for this religion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He revealed this Qur'an and this religion to bring people mina dhulumati ila nur, from darkness unto the light. The light is Islam, yes, but the light is also admitting your shortcomings, admitting your faults, admitting the things that you've been through, and then working through them. I also saw a post not too long ago. It said a pious man was once asked, "Why don't you ever speak of other people?" He responded by saying, "I am not yet pleased with myself. Therefore, I don't have time for other people." And that should be our attitude. I'm not yet pleased enough with myself and where I want to be in my own journey, where I want to be in my own path to healing and redemption of some form, to be worried about other people. So we need to change this narrative in our community. Brothers and sisters, if you are struggling with mental health, if you're struggling with trauma, if you've been abused, whether it is as of a child or in a relationship, in a marriage, if you have had things that have caused you PTSD, please seek help. Talk to someone who can help you navigate through it. Find your safe space, whomever that might be. And I mean a true safe space, someone who's not going to judge you based on things that you had no control over. Or even if it was mistakes that you made, they're still not going to judge you, because we all have them. Someone who is going to help you navigate those rough waters and find a safe place for you to heal. Because once you heal, and those scars no longer have the same effect on you as they used to, you will see life as you've never seen it. You will see hope. When you read about hope in the Qur'an, you will know what that hope feels like. When you know that Allah is merciful, you'll understand that. Until then, a lot of Muslims who have come to me have jaded opinions about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about the hope in Allah. They look at the world and say it's so crazy, it's so dark. Allah has everything in order. I'm not worried about the world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has everything in order. It's in the way that He wants it to be, and it's going to be what He wants it to be. قَدْرُ اللَّهِ وَمَا شَاءَ فَعَلَ. It is the will of Allah. He does it as He pleases. You have to be focused on you. You have to worry about you. You have to concentrate on you. So brothers and sisters, stop equating mental health with faith. They have a correlation, but they're not the end all have all. If a person has weak faith, then yes, they're going to have some of these symptoms, and that could be, so you have to find out about that. But if they're doing all the things that they feel like they can do and it's still there, then it's a deeper issue that you need to find out what it is. And brothers and sisters, don't think that just because you have anxiety, depression, bipolarism, manic depressive disorders, panic disorders, whatever, it's because you're not a good Muslim. That's not always the case. And a lot of times I have seen almost 3,000 clients. A lot of times that's not the case. It's something that they need to deal with from their past. And they might not even know what it is. So you might have to go digging. I had repressed memories of my childhood before I started having therapy. I had completely forgotten about some of the things that I had been put through. So this is my message today. This is my reflection today. Mental health does not equate, or mental health issues do not equate to you being a bad Muslim. Being a weak Muslim and being away from those things will cause you some mental distress, but you can be doing everything right to the best of your abilities. Nobody's doing everything right, but you can be doing as much as you can to the best of your abilities and still be struggling from these things, because you have to address the bigger issue. And that's what we need to be putting out there to the Muslim community. We need more services like this, and people need to stop purporting this nonsense that is connected to faith. As always, brothers and sisters, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to continue with more and more topics. And the podcast might get longer and longer as I have more and more rants to say, but I'll always try to keep it under 40 minutes, inshallah, because I know some of you like to listen to this on your ride. Some of you like to listen to this on your ride to work or during your workout or whatever. So I don't want to make it exuberantly long, and I want to be able to give you concise, clear information to the best of my abilities. If you think that mental health needs to be addressed differently in the Muslim community, drop a like below, drop a thumbs up, hit the sub button if you're not subscribed. Tell me in the comments what you think, the topics you want to see discussed. Drop them in the comments. I am going to read all of them and put them into thought when I comes up to planning the next podcast, inshallah, and the next videos. And as always, I love you all for the sake of Allah, for your time. Your time is your most valuable possession. Thank you for giving it to me. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Reflections, inshallah ta'ala, which is going to be about, I don't know yet. I will decide when I sit down, because none of this, that's the thing, brothers and sisters, none of this is scripted. None of this is scripted. I know what I want to talk about. And I know there's a lot of professionals like, oh, you should script podcast, script. That's not what this is about. This is unscripted for a reason. It is reflections. I know exactly the topic I want to talk about, but how I'm going to talk about it or what I'm going to say, I have a few points in my head, and then I just go with it. I push record on this camera and I just let it roll. So sometimes I'll say things and miss things, but and if I have, put them down below, and I'll try to do better the next time, inshallah. But that's the goal. Get a little better and better and better each time, and be consistent. I want to give you guys this consistency because I've seen how much the older podcasts, the domestic violence tapes, the prison tapes, how much they help so many people. And that's some of the reason why people are still coming to my counseling sessions below. So we're going to try to keep some consistency, inshallah ta'ala. I love you all for the sake of Allah. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Reflections. And until then, May Allah keep your heart, body, soul, mind strong. Remember, my content is for the everyday Muslim. I'm not preaching to the choir. I'm not preaching to the already pious, good to do Muslims. I'm preaching to the everyday Muslim, the struggling Muslim, the Muslim who has trouble getting out of the bed in the morning, the Muslim who's found or is looking for a reason to continue on, doesn't feel like there's anything left for them, the Muslim who's struggling to pray 5 times a day, the Muslim who's struggling to carry on. That's who my content is for, because I've been there. I love you all for the sake of Allah, and I'll see you on the next podcast. Barakallahu feekum. May Allah reward all of you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.